How many games will the Tampa Bay Buccaneers win in 2024? What's going on, Bucs fans? It's Mitch here, back with another NFL record prediction video, this time for Tampa, giving you my thoughts on their schedule this year, the tough matchups, the easy matchups, and whether or not the Bucs can shock the world again, win the NFC South, and maybe even surge in the playoffs. Gronk spiked the like button. Don't forget to subscribe for more NFL and NFC South record predictions just like this. Hop in the comments and let me know how many games you think Baker and the boys will win in 2024. Let's go, man. Let's talk about the Buccaneers schedule this year. Tampa Bay largely has a well-known cast of characters at this point. They've had a very similar core of players ever since 2019, 2020, when Bruce Arians got there, Todd Bowles got there, then Tom Brady, then they won the Super Bowl. They still have a lot of those players, and that is what has allowed them to continue their success even post Tom Brady. Those players are champions. Those players are winners. Those players have a pedigree. Those players have a culture. That building is full of heart, full of soul, full of fury. And that has continued under Baker Mayfield's leadership. And Baker has added his own little flavor to it. And that's what I really appreciate about the team last year. But the interesting thing about this year's team is there's a new contender on the rise in their division. Kirk Cousins has come to town. Everybody assumes the Falcons are going to walk away with this division. But Tampa's going to say not so fast, and we'll see if they're able to maintain the hold on this division. So week 1 starts with the Washington Commanders at home. That's a pretty easy matchup, in my opinion. If you're going to ask for a team in the first week, what would you want? You would want a new head coach, check. You would want a new quarterback, rookie, check. You would want to play at home, check. So even with Dave Canales gone, dealing with a new offense, a scheme, all that stuff, some new players on defense in the secondary in terms of who's going to be starting, who's not. Definitely some, flipping of the offensive line for sure. Tampa Bay's got to deal with their own fixes, but I personally think that Tampa should be able to take care of business in this one. First of all, Todd Bowles, excellent defensive mind when it comes to dealing with mobile quarterbacks. I think his plans for those type of guys, to pressure them, to keep them in the pocket, to blitz them from different angles, to make their life uncomfortable, and the Bucs' ability to stop the run is always at the top of the league. And then offensively, they've got great skill talent. They've played for a while. Chris Godwin, Mike Evans. They know how to deal with opening weeks in the NFL, how to get open, how to make plays. Baker is an experienced vet at this point, playing some of his best football of his career in Tampa Bay. Rashad White, you can lean on him in the run game. And the offensive line certainly got better this offseason. I expect that to take immediate impact immediately in week 1 because I think the run game is going to see a huge jump this year for Tampa. In week number 2, though, I think they face a better team on the road in Detroit, a team that beat them in the playoffs last year. I don't think anything changes. I think, if anything, the gap between Detroit and Tampa got a little bit larger this offseason due to the fact that Tampa traded their corner to Detroit. They traded Carlton Davis to Detroit. And Carlton Davis is actually on paper a pretty darn good matchup for Mike Evans, somebody that the Lions just simply could not cover last postseason. So honestly, Detroit isn't a contender, a true contender. I think Tampa Bay is a fringe playoff team, a team that can win their division. Detroit, though, is a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. They don't have many holes. I think they've improved their secondary. They have a pretty good pass rush, a great run defense. I think they're very well coached. Jared Goff's a solid quarterback. They've got multiple weapons in Sam Laporta, St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, a good offensive line. That's going to be a very tough game to win. If Baker has an excellent game, maybe they can win a shootout, but I feel like that's the only way they win this game. Week 3, I think Tampa bounces back. I think they get 2 of the 5 worst teams in the NFL, 5 worst rosters in the NFL in the first 3 weeks. So I think that is awesome for any team, and Tampa's going to take it and launch themselves to 2-1 here with a nice, comfortable start. I think Sean Payton is a great coach and still is, But I just feel like, and Sean Payton knows how to play Todd Bowles, and Sean Payton knows how to play the Bucs. That's for sure, right? But I don't think he has the personnel at his disposal. I really don't. I don't think that they have the defense to pressure and get after Baker Mayfield. I don't think they have the offense, especially if it's a rookie quarterback, to consistently move the ball against the Bucs defense. And especially if it is Bo Nix, I think he's going to have a tough time deciphering Todd Bowles' blitz packages, which is really going to be difficult. So despite the Sean Payton factor and him kind of owning Tampa Bay, I really don't see this winning, Denver winning here, especially in Tampa. Week number 4, Philadelphia comes to Tampa Bay for a playoff rematch of the wild card round last year. A lot of people will pick Philly in this game because I think a lot of people believe Philly is much improved. I do as well, but here's the thing. I just think this is a bad matchup for the Eagles. I don't think this is a good matchup for them. I think they struggled to cover Mike Evans and Chris Godwin at receiver. I think that their defense in the middle of the field is significantly weakened, and I think the Bucs know how to attack it. Now, the question will be, does the new offensive coordinator how to attack it? Baker, though, really had a great game against the Eagles in the playoffs, and I thought they ran the ball well enough as well. I think the offensive line is good enough, especially at the tackle position, to be able to slow down the Eagles' pass rush. I think that the defense for Tampa is really the recipe here. I think Tampa might have a weak secondary, especially at corner. Jamel Dean is a fair matchup for one of these receivers on the outside. But I really just think that Todd Bowles and the way that he prepares for these quarterbacks and the way that he has prepared for Jalen Hurts, and he has quite often given Jalen Hurts some of his worst football games we've ever seen him play. And it's because of the blitzing. It's because they know how to stop that run game, know how to put numbers in the box to be able to foil that run game. And the simplistic passing attack of the Eagles has always had a tough time against Tampa with all the different blitzes and the zone droppers and all that stuff. Now, maybe Kellen Moore, a guy that has had success against Todd Bowles in Dallas, can get some of his recipe from Dak Prescott and bring it to Jalen Hurts. But I personally don't know if that's going to be the case. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know. I feel like it's a Jalen Hurts problem. He holds onto the ball a little bit too much. You can kind of push him out of the pocket, and he's not the same player. To me, I just feel like Bowles knows how to game plan against the Eagles. Maybe they'll prove me wrong here, Philly. It's in Tampa, though. I'm going to go with the Bucs at home. Week number 5. At Atlanta. I think Atlanta's going to win this game on a Thursday night. It's a short week after an intense game against the Eagles. And Atlanta will be catching the Bucs at the right time in terms of it's Thursday, at home, in the Dome, all that stuff. I think most likely these two teams will split the season series. I think they're very close and competitive. So I have Tampa winning the game at home over the Falcons if I can find it. Where is it? There it is. It's actually not that long. That gap is pretty small. You usually don't see division games, both of them at the start of the year. That usually doesn't happen, but that's the case here. So I've got Atlanta to beat Tampa in Atlanta. I think the one thing I worry about with that matchup is Atlanta's got a good offensive line. They can pretty much run the ball on anybody, and I feel like Cousins can pick apart the Bucs secondary. I also think the Bucs can move the ball on Atlanta. So I think when they're at home, both teams, they'll get that edge of the potential added ability of the defense making a few extra plays because the crowd noise, the pass rush getting their hair lit on fire, in their home building. So I think the defenses will rise to the occasion when they're at home. Week number 6, the New Orleans Saints. In New Orleans, this feels like a loss, right? The Saints and the Bucs typically split. I think last year the Bucs won in New Orleans and the Saints won in Tampa, if I'm not mistaken. So that might happen again, but the Saints typically have beaten the Bucs in New Orleans. I think, again, these two teams are very familiar. Dennis Allen has had a ton of success slowing down the Bucs offenses of the past. Now, that was more of the Bruce Arians, Byron Leftwich variety, but still, he did a pretty darn good job in the final matchup last year, and they have the personnel to match up with the Bucs receivers and make life difficult up front on Baker Mayfield getting a pass rush on him. On the other side, I think Derek Carr can get in a little bit of a rhythm with some short passing. Alvin Kamara in space, Chris Olave could be a mismatch in this game. So I feel like the Saints do have a pretty good matchup against Tampa Bay. But I will say I do expect them to split again, so I am going to take Tampa to beat the Saints at home. The Ravens at Tampa Bay. I'm going to go with the upset here in week number 7. Another upset for the Bucs at home. I like Tampa Bay at home. I think it's a weird environment to play in. There's always some odd weather there. And to me, Monday night, home field is just multiplied by like 2 or 3, right? Like Monday Night Football, prime time, the world, the spotlight, all that stuff. Everybody's watching. And again, this is another one of those matchups where Tampa is good against the run. Tampa's got those linebackers that can blitz. Tampa's got those different angles to attack Lamar Jackson. Think of what the Texans were able to do to the Ravens last year in that first half of that divisional game. Think of what the Chiefs were able to do against the Ravens, blitzing Lamar in that second half. Think of all the different times we've seen Lamar struggle. It's usually been against blitzing coordinators, and it's been against teams that can slow down his rushing attack. And I think that's what Tampa's defense possesses. I also believe that Tampa offensively, I don't think the Ravens are going to be quite as good on defense as last year. I think that you can definitely win some matchups on the outside, and I feel like you can run the ball maybe a little bit. But to me, like the Ravens pass rush isn't all that scary unless they're sending extra people, which is going to give some matchups for Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and company. So I think Tampa pulls off maybe a lower scoring upset there in Tampa Bay. In week number 9, Tampa travels to Kansas City, and they have arguably the toughest 2-game stretch of any team in pro football in the entire NFL season. They have to play Kansas City on Monday night and then San Francisco. Arguably the 2 best teams in the NFL. I think they lose both of those games. To me, they're just not good matchups. Kansas City at home in Kansas City on a Monday night. It's a Super Bowl rematch of sorts, but there is no Tom Brady there. Todd Bowles will give his best and his best game plan to foil Patrick Mahomes, but I personally think that the Chiefs' defense is going to give Baker and company a tough time. I also think that San Francisco has just absolutely annihilated the Bucs the last couple of times they've played. So I'm going to go with the 49ers there because Shanahan just seems to have a perfect passer rating with Brock Purdy or whichever quarterback it is when facing the Tampa Bay Bucs. Then there's a bye week. Tampa at the New York Giants. This is an interesting game. I picked the Giants in my Giants preview. I think the Giants have played the Bucs in the past fairly well. Brian Daboll is a pretty creative coordinator. This could certainly be a win for Tampa. I think Tampa is the better team. So I could definitely change my mind on that one. But Brian Daboll, like I said, good offensive mind. I think the offensive line for the Giants will be improved. I think the receiving core will be a bit improved. I do think the question will be, can they hold up their momentum throughout the course of the season? Because it does feel like the Giants will be a team that goes downhill throughout the course of the year. I don't think the Giants have a great secondary. I don't think the Giants have a great defense, but they do have a very good pass rush and a good front seven. And they're in New York. It could be some funky weather, which might give Baker some issues. Both teams, I believe, have a bye right before this game. So I'm going to lean Giants there with an upset. I do have the Bucs winning some upsets, so I have to give the Bucs, an upset loss as well. I've got Tampa beating the Raiders at home. That's a game where the Raiders just feel like a team that doesn't match up well with Tampa because they want to be physical. They want to run the ball down your throat. They have subpar quarterback play, and it's almost the opposite of what you need to beat Tampa Bay. The Raiders don't have great corners. To me, that's just not a very good matchup for the Raiders. They're not really going to be able to move the Bucs off the ball that well on offense. They're not going to be able to sustain a consistent passing attack thanks to a subpar quarterback. And then on the other side, I do think the Bucs will be able to move the ball, especially at home. Then you've got the Chargers in LA. I'm just going to lean towards Harbaugh and Herbert here. I don't love the Chargers at receiver, but I do really like their offensive line this year. I think their run game will get it going towards the end of the year. And their defense is interesting because they've got good pass rushers. I like their secondary. I feel like they're weak against the run, but the Bucs have never really, they're not a very good running team. Maybe they get a lot better this year, but typically the Bucs need to throw the ball to win. And I think the Chargers are better in the passing game than they are in the running game overall. It's also in LA, a cross country against one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Then in week 16, you play Dallas. That's a pretty bad matchup, in my opinion, in Dallas. Dak has lit up Todd Bowles as of late. CeeDee Lamb has been a problem. And the other side of the ball, the Cowboys' just speed of their defense has overwhelmed Tampa, especially at the line of scrimmage in recent outings. So I like the Cowboys there. And then we've got 2 games against Carolina. So right now we're at 7-8. I think they're at least going to win one of these. So depending on whether or not they're able to sweep Carolina, they could be 9-8 or they could be 8-9. And that's pretty much what I have Tampa Bay at. 8-9, 9-8. And probably if they get to 9-8, I think they're going to win the division. I feel like if they can get to 10-7, it's almost a for sure that the team that gets to 10-7 in this division will win the division. If you can get to 9-8 though, I feel like you could still win the division. So it's kind of up to can you get to 9-8? I think even 8-9 has a chance to win this division this year, because I think the schedule is tougher than last year for sure for all the teams, and I feel like the Saints might slightly regress. I feel like the Falcons will get better, but how much better is the question, and Carolina is still near the end of the division. So to me, I think Tampa is right in the mix to repeat as champs, or three-peat or four-peat. I'm not exactly sure where we're at with Tampa Bay, but I definitely feel good about what their team is. I just don't feel like they're a contender. I feel like they're one of those teams that, you know, they're lucky they're kind of in a weaker division. They've got enough talent, enough veterans, you know, a mix of young guys where they're able to make something happen within that division and kind of be a big dog or a big fish in a small pond, sort of, so to speak. But they're not one of the big dogs of the NFC. That's kind of how I view Tampa. You guys let me know in the comment section below what you think. Gronk, spike the like button. We'll see you in the next record prediction video. Peace.